Why do the men who care the most always become the easiest to ignore? You speak from your heart. You respond fast. You try to make her smile, hoping she'll feel the same, but instead she drifts. She pulls away, and one day she just stops trying. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you made it too easy. Machiavelli warned, power is lost the moment you make yourself fully known. Obsession isn't born from closeness. It's born from mystery, unpredictability, restraint. In this video, I'll show you how to stop performing and start creating silence that dominates. If your attention ever became your weakness, this isn't a video, it's a reversal. Stay until the end. 1. The power of not needing approval. The man who wants to be liked is already beneath her. He doesn't know it, but she does. Instantly. Not from what he says, but from how he says it. Every smile that comes too fast, every answer that comes too soon, every effort to please, to perform, to be the safe choice. It all tells her one thing: he's already surrendered. And desire cannot grow in the soil of surrender. Approval feels good, but it costs more than most men realize, because the moment you start chasing it, you stop being a mystery. You become a mirror. And mirrors don't spark obsession, they only reflect it. Liam was 34, worked in UX design, sharp, calm voice, always had the right thing to say. He'd been called a good man more times than he could count. He read psychology books, practiced eye contact, memorized openers, even studied body language on YouTube. But none of that mattered the night he met Alina. Because she didn't need his research. She only needed 5 seconds to feel the truth. He smiled too quickly when she teased him. He double-texted before she answered once. He asked thoughtful questions, but not because he was curious. Because he was afraid of silence. When she paused, he filled the gap. When she disagreed, he shifted his opinion. He laughed when she wasn't even joking. Polite, present, predictable. By the end of the night, she pulled out her phone, not because she was bored, but because she was certain. She didn't need to hear more. She already knew the ending. And Liam? He kept talking, not out of confidence, but out of fear, because in his mind, silence felt like slipping away. He didn't realize. His need to be seen made him invisible. His effort to impress made her indifferent. Machiavelli said, "A man who builds his power on the affection of others builds on sand. Approval is unstable. Needing it makes you readable. And once you're readable, you're replaceable." Desire doesn't respond to logic, it responds to energy. And energy built on need always collapses under pressure. A man who seeks approval can never lead the interaction, because deep down he's waiting to be chosen. But the man who leads, he doesn't wait. He decides. In 30 seconds, I'll show you why letting her feel your silence creates more tension than any compliment ever could. He thought his quick replies would make him seem reliable, but they only made him available. He thought agreeing would make him easy to talk to, but it made him forgettable. She didn't need more answers. She wanted to feel something real. And real power doesn't rush. It doesn't perform. It lets the world lean in or walk away. And both options are fine. How many men spend years becoming better speakers when what they really needed was better silence? How many conversations have you ruined by trying to win when what would have worked was letting her wonder? Today, practice stillness. Don't explain, don't fill the gap. Let the pause do the work. Let her curiosity bloom in the absence of noise. Because when you stop giving your energy away too soon, the power dynamic shifts. You'll notice people leaning in, not because you're louder, but because you're unshaken. But if you want her to chase that energy, what comes next is the real strategy. Next part. Why? Most men kill desire before it even begins. Skip this and you'll keep being heard, but never truly felt. You'll keep being appreciated, but never desired. You'll keep being remembered only as a nice man she never craved. 2. Why most men kill desire. The most polite words can kill the deepest desire. And most men have no idea they're doing it. Because they think being agreeable is safe. They think being good is the way to be chosen. But the moment your voice sounds like a request, your presence becomes forgettable. Not because you're weak, but because you made her feel like you already gave yourself away. Adrian was 29. He worked in logistics in Toronto. He wasn't rich, but he was solid, reliable, generous. He always said the right things. I support you. Whatever makes you happy. I'm here if you need anything. He believed kindness would earn him intimacy, so he gave his full attention, answered every text within seconds, laughed at every story, even the ones that weren't funny. He told himself he was being emotionally available, but what he didn't realize was that he never gave her space to feel anything for him, because he was already too available for her. One night, after driving her home in the rain, she said thank you and walked away. No hug, no lingering eye contact, no second look, just a door closing. Adrienne sat there with the engine still running. Not angry, not heartbroken, just numb. Because that's when he felt it. The invisible line he had quietly crossed, the one between being appreciated and being undesired. Machiavelli never said desire is logical, he said desire is tactical. It does not come from your effort, it comes from your effect. And when your every sentence sounds like it's asking for permission, you strip yourself of strategic tension. It's like giving away the plot before the story begins. The ego loses interest the moment it feels full control. And a woman's ego doesn't want to nurture a man she owns. It wants to chase what it can't fully predict. Up next, I'll show you why distance creates curiosity and how to use it without acting cold. He thought support would make her feel safe, but it made him feel soft. He thought sharing every thought would build intimacy, but it made him easy to read, easy to ignore. He gave her peace before she ever earned it, and peace without tension becomes boredom. What if the way you show love is the very reason she stops feeling desire? What if your emotional honesty doesn't make her closer, it makes her certain? Today, say less. Don't rush to comfort. Let her wonder what you're thinking. Because when you stop talking to impress and start speaking with presence, your silence becomes sharp. And that sharpness cuts through credibility. You'll feel a shift, not in her tone, but in how long she pauses before she responds. But if you want her to crave your presence, not just enjoy it, what comes next is the key. Which one didn't sit right with you? Say it. Clarity sharpens in friction. Next content, the Men Who Awaken Desire. Skip this part and you'll keep giving everything too early, only to realize you were never truly seen. Don't miss what separates the forgettable from the unforgettable. 3. The Men Who Awaken Desire. The men who awaken desire don't try to. They don't flatter. They don't chase. They don't look for permission before they speak. And that's exactly why they're unforgettable. Because while most men seek to be chosen, these men move like they already know their place in the world. Not above her, not beneath her, but untouchable. And to the female ego, that's not just attractive, it's irresistible. Irresistible was 36, a financial consultant from Chicago, quiet but not shy, confident but never loud. When he walked into a room, people didn't turn because of his looks, they turned because of how he held silence. He met her at a mutual friend's dinner party. She was stunning, playful, magnetic, and she was used to men folding in seconds. But Caleb didn't flinch. He didn't flood her with compliments. He didn't offer stories to prove his status. He asked one question, then waited. When she tried to test him with a sarcastic jab, he didn't react. He just tilted his head slightly and said, "That was cute." And then? He paused again. That pause was a problem for her, not because it was rude, but because it was unpredictable. He didn't fill it with apology, he didn't seek approval, and in that silence, something strange happened. Her smile tightened, her eyes narrowed. She felt something she hadn't felt in years, the presence of a man she couldn't immediately define. Machiavelli taught, the rarest power is to remain unmoved. Most men filter every word through the question, will she like this? But the man who awakens desire doesn't filter, he frames. He leads with grounded calm, he holds his opinions even when they clash, and he lets his indifference to outcome speak louder than performance ever could. Which one exposed a habit you didn't know you had? Comment the shift you're about to make. What comes next isn't noise. It's the move that makes them addicted to your absence. She thought she could steer him, but he didn't react. She tried to provoke him, he smirked. She complimented his mind, he nodded once, and changed the subject. He made her feel seen, but not owned. Safe, but not in control. And that tension, that's where desire grows. He didn't do anything extraordinary. He just didn't collapse. He didn't chase. He didn't ask, do you like me, with every word, every look, every tone. And that made her ego restless. Because when a woman meets a man she can't emotionally control, her mind doesn't relax, it obsesses. Today, hold the pause. Let your presence do the talking. If she tests you, breathe, then respond with less than expected. Not to play games, but to prove your self-control is stronger than your need to be liked. You'll notice how silence becomes tension, and tension becomes gravity. But if you want to become her obsession, not her entertainer, what comes next is where that begins. Up next, the irresistible anomaly. Miss this part and you'll go back to chasing validation when you could have been the mystery that bends her perception. You don't want to miss what separates a man she respects from a man she remembers forever. 4. The irresistible anomaly. Most men follow a script. They flatter, they agree, they show their cards too soon, and deep down they believe this makes them trustworthy. But the truth is colder. The more predictable you are, the faster you vanish from her mind. Because desire doesn't grow from what she understands, it grows from what she can't fully explain. And a man who breaks the pattern without asking for attention, he doesn't just attract her curiosity, he hijacks it. Nathan, 32, worked in architecture. Sharp eye, quiet confidence. The kind of man who noticed details but never felt the need to announce them. At a birthday dinner with friends he met Elle. She was warm, intelligent, radiant. The kind of woman used to being the center of every conversation. She expected him to respond like the others did. Eager, expressive, full of enthusiasm. But he didn't. He asked one question, listened, then didn't try to impress. When the table laughed at her joke, he smiled faintly and glanced at his wine. When she teased him, he raised an eyebrow without replying. That silence unsettled her, not because it was rude, but because it forced her to sit with her own thoughts. He wasn't resisting her, he just wasn't performing for her, and that changed everything. Later that night, she leaned in and said, "You're hard to read." He didn't blink. He just said, "Most people say too much." That was it. No smile, no explanation, just a calm stare, and a pause long enough to make her wonder what he wasn't saying. She laughed, but it wasn't casual. It was nervous. That laugh, that was her ego trying to cover the discomfort of not being in control. Machiavelli wrote, "Men are driven more by the fear of losing what they don't understand than the joy of receiving what is easily given." A man who reveals too much becomes common. A man who makes her guess becomes unforgettable. He doesn't need to be louder. He just needs to remain unclaimed. Each one of these cost you the most, personally. Drop a one-line story below, no names, just truth. In 30 seconds, I'll show you how unpredictability, used strategically, becomes the most powerful signal of value. She thought her charm would guide the interaction, but he remained still. She leaned in. He didn't move. She asked if he was always this quiet. He smiled but said nothing. She wasn't used to this rhythm, because she couldn't lead it. And that lack of emotional control over him, that was the first time she felt real interest. He didn't talk like a performer, he moved like a presence. He didn't explain himself, he invited mystery. And he wasn't cold, he was composed. The more she searched for his validation, the more valuable his silence became. And in that silence, her ego started asking dangerous questions. Why hasn't he reacted? Why do I care? He thought being honest earned trust, but every detail he withheld made him more captivating. He didn't try to prove he was worthy, and that made her want to prove she was. What if not answering is the very thing that keeps you in her head? What if the less you explain, the more power you hold? Today, say less. Let silence carry weight. Don't over-explain. Don't offer clarity where mystery holds more power. Because when your presence doesn't chase approval, it starts commanding attention. But if you want to move beyond being noticed, if you want to become the anchor she orbits around, what comes next is everything. Coming up next, from servant to presence. Ignore it, and you'll keep playing the helper in someone else's story. But stay, and I'll show you how a single shift in posture turns obedience into quiet dominance. 5. From servant to presence. You think you're being caring, thoughtful, supportive, but to her subconscious mind, you're becoming predictable, and predictability, to the ego, feels like ownership. And what the ego owns, it no longer desires. That's why the emotional servant never becomes the object of obsession, only the object of convenience. Lucas, 34, worked in UX design in Seattle. He was the kind of man every woman says she wants: kind, present, emotionally generous. When his colleague Anna went through a breakup, he became her daily support line, texted back within minutes, checked in before meetings, even brought her coffee just because. She smiled, said he was sweet, and opened up about everything, from her job stress to her childhood. Lucas thought this was connection. What he didn't see was the slow shift in her gaze. One day, after hours of texting, he sent a message that was a little more direct. "I've really enjoyed talking to you lately. Just wanted to say that." She left it on read. The next morning at work, she was polite but distant. During lunch, she laughed a little louder with someone else, and when Lucas offered to walk her to her car, she declined. "Thanks, but I'm good." That one sentence, normal on the surface, landed like a quiet verdict. Not because she was cruel, but because something had already ended before it began. Machiavelli never said, "Be kind to gain favor." He said, "Don't give what hasn't been earned." The emotional servant offers his heart unguarded, hoping it will be returned. But power is not in what you give, it's in what you withhold. A man who shows his soul before she invests doesn't feel honest, he feels available, and availability, when unearned, becomes invisible. Soon, I'll show you why removing comfort, not increasing kindness, is the beginning of true influence. She said she wanted emotional connection, but what she got was emotional access. She had all his thoughts, all his energy, all his attention, and still, she didn't feel desire. Because desire isn't born from support. It's born from self-possession, from a man who listens but doesn't chase, who sees her pain but doesn't rush to fix it, who can be near her feelings without being absorbed by them. He gave too much. He moved too fast. He assumed being there would make him irreplaceable, but all it did was make him predictable. And predictability doesn't earn loyalty, it earns a label: friend, helper, the one she can always call but never fully want. So what if your empathy has become a prison? What if your kindness without edge has turned you into a tool, not a man? Today, let one problem go unsolved. Let one question linger unanswered. Sit in the moment where you usually rush to help and watch what happens when you don't. Because the man who can witness emotion without losing his frame radiates quiet strength. But if you want to step fully into presence and make her feel it without a word, what comes next is your blueprint. Which strategy do you wish your younger self had known? Comment it like you're writing to someone still stuck in the old cycle. Next up, speaking to her ego. Most men talk to impress, but the few who dominate her mind, they speak to something deeper, something she doesn't even know she's listening with. Miss this, and you'll keep being heard, but never truly felt. 6. Speaking to her ego. You think you're talking to her, but you're not. You're talking to something much colder, much more powerful, her ego. It's the invisible filter behind every reaction, every delay, every glance she gives you, and unless you know how to speak to it, you'll keep wondering why your best intentions fall flat. Michael, 36, was a high-performing sales director in San Diego. Confident in the boardroom, composed under pressure, but confused when it came to women. He wasn't needy, not obviously. He didn't beg for attention or flood her with compliments. What he did was more subtle and more dangerous. He over-explained himself, repeated points to avoid misunderstanding, smiled to soften the edge of his opinions. In his mind, he was just being considerate, but to her ego, it was weakness wrapped in polish. It was a man asking silently, "Is this okay? Do I still have your attention?" And every time she sensed that tiny flicker of uncertainty, something in her pulled away. Then came the moment. During a casual dinner, after he made a thoughtful point about values and relationships, she paused and said, "You don't have to work so hard, you know," and smiled, not kindly, but like she'd seen something. He froze. She didn't mean the sentence itself. She meant the energy beneath it. The unspoken, "I hope this lands well." That night, he lay awake and saw it clearly for the first time. He'd been polished, articulate even in sight, but never untouchable, never unreadable. And that made him replaceable. Machiavelli warned, the appearance of control is more powerful than the truth of vulnerability. Most men try to build connection by being emotionally available. But women don't chase emotional servants, they chase sovereigns. The man whose words are measured, whose emotions are seen but not spilled, whose presence doesn't beg for validation, it demands awareness. Because the ego doesn't respect what comes easy, it fixates on what doesn't fold. Up next, I'll show you how mystery bends perception and how to weaponize it without saying a word. She never said, "You're too eager." She never said, "You explain too much." But her silence said everything. And deep down, he knew. He wasn't forgotten because he lacked value. He was forgotten because he gave it all up front. The mind doesn't hold on to what it fully understands. It lets it go. That's why it's not logic that lingers. It's tension. He stopped texting just to maintain presence. Stopped explaining every mood. Let pauses breathe instead of rushing to fill them. And what happened? She leaned in. Her responses sharpened. Her questions deepened. Not because he did something clever, but because he stopped doing what everyone else does. He stopped chasing her understanding, and she started chasing his. So here's the real question. When you speak, are you leading the interaction or softening yourself just enough to stay acceptable? Start here. Leave one message on read. Don't justify a delay. Say less. Hold tension longer. You'll start noticing people leaning in, not to hear better, but to decode what you're not saying. But if you want to transform every word you speak into a weapon of influence, what happens next is the final key. And that key is in the conclusion, where everything connects, where power becomes presence and presence becomes unforgettable. If this video opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to hear this right now. It could change their life. This wasn't just a guide to attraction, it was a blueprint to power, because once you understand that you're not speaking to her ears, but to her ego, everything shifts. You stop chasing connection, you start commanding curiosity. You stop performing, you start creating presence. You've seen why neediness kills desire, why comfort makes you invisible, and why silence, used with strategy, can speak louder than any clever line. The man who holds power doesn't rush, doesn't explain, doesn't seek validation. He leads the interaction by not reacting, Let this be the moment you stop asking to be chosen. Let this be the moment you realize you are never supposed to be the one trying harder, because when you speak from calm control, not hunger, you don't just get noticed, you get remembered. If you felt something shift inside you today, comment "Dominate with Calm" below and subscribe, because this channel isn't about pickup lines. It's about becoming a presence the world cannot ignore.